All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the September 2nd board workshop. Thank you to all of you joining us this evening, and thank you to the staff at Williams Elementary, our technology staff, and our communication staff for letting us host it here at Williams. Before we dive into the agenda, I do want to introduce the principal of Williams Elementary, Dr. Jennifer Hinson, and she's going to share something she's really proud of here at the start of the year.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks and welcome to Williams. We're happy to host this evening. As a school campus and across our district, we're really looking closely at instructional strategies and the things that we're doing that's going to help students move forward each day. And so tonight, I just want to share one of the strategies that we're using at our campus and across other campuses as well. And it really is a strategy that can be used at all levels, from elementary to high school. And whether you're doing math, science, social studies, reading, ELAR, writing, or even addressing learner profile, is a strategy that can be used. So it's called Structured Student Discourse, and basically is where our teachers encourage students to turn and talk with each other about a problem of practice or a situation or something that they've read, and then use a sentence stem or a structure for their conversation so that they're really having to justify their thinking and hold their stance and make a claim. So for example, if the problem was 5 times 2 equals what, a structured conversation about that might look like, I know that 5 multiplied by 2 is 10 because if I have 2 groups of 5 cookies, I can add 5 plus 5 more and get 10, or until I get the sum of 10, so 5 multiplied by 2 is 10. So it's that I know this because and so that helps me have a structured conversation about any topic. And so that's one of the skills that we're utilizing. It also is part of research base in both Lead Forward and 7 Steps for multilingual learners. So it's really great for our emergent bilinguals as well.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Hinson. I'm real encouraged. I got to visit your campus a few times in these first 3 weeks of school, and I'm real encouraged by the way that you have the entire school focused on what needs to get done and the embedding of a strategy such as this. So congratulations on a great start to the school year. And thank you for being here this evening. We don't have to watch her as she... Well. So at this time, we don't have any public comment, and I want to briefly go through the agenda. We're going to have our 2 principals to my right share the current implementation of the turnaround plans for their campuses. Mr. Wes Vanacek is going to review campus improvement plans and district improvement plan updates. Mr. Landon Heflin is going to talk about our long-range planning process for rezoning. And trustees, I really encourage you, this is where we really want your feedback and to hear what's important to you about how we do this work. And then lastly, we're going to go back to Wes Vanacek, and he's going to talk about our current efforts to improve our college, career, military readiness of every student in Georgetown ISD. I'm going to pass it to Dr. Angie Harris to talk about the turnaround plan for Cooper Elementary.
Hi all, good to see you again. When we met last time, you guys asked for our plan, and today we get to talk to you a little bit about our delivery on that plan and where we are in that process. You can't throw that at me last minute. Made me nervous. So we had talked about our plan being coherent, tiered intervention, systematizing behavior, and just communicating our outcomes to everyone. And now I can click it, right? You got me. And so here's where we are in delivery on that. So what we have come to at this point is we've actually been just really focused on those 3 big rocks. We are trying to say we've got 3 things that we're focused on this year. All the other things are great, but these are the things we're doing because we believe that they're going to lead to the outcomes for Cooper that we're hoping for and dreaming of. So one of the things that we have, I'll start with systematizing behavior. So we talked a little bit about the 1, 2, 3 chances to fix it, the all hands on deck, and the tiered support and the skills lessons. So this is kind of just the screenshot of the top of our reporting system that we have come up with. In 12 days of school, we have 9 assigned responders on this document. So anytime that there is a disturbance in the force, something in the classroom that is going wrong, or anytime the teacher says, I want to have a conversation with someone about a kiddo, they simply just grab the QR code, do a click. It's about 1.5 minutes to put all the information in, and it says, hey, let's talk about this kiddo. Let's talk about this situation. I need some help. It may not be urgent. It's not a 911 call. It's just a, hey, something's going on. In that time, we have had 83, in 12 days, we have had 83 documented skill building conversations. That is incredible. 9 people responding. Like I said, that doc, I have a little iPad that's with me nonstop, or my screen. If I'm working at my desk, it's up there, and we're continuously monitoring it. Hey, what's going on in this classroom? What's going on in this classroom? We have been able to just intervene and just, hey, I noticed that you're kicking. What's going on with the kicking? Let's talk about that. Let's walk out in the hallway. Let's have a little conversation. Let's get you right back to class. And we've been able to do that 83 times in 12 days. And I am so excited about that. Just in general, we have had 1,300 individual affirmations. And so one of the things that we do in Georgetown is we have brag boards. And every time a student has a notice, I notice you doing this. It's not just a good job. It's a, I notice that you were focused when you were sitting on carpet time. Go sign the brag board. I noticed you were paying real close attention and you corrected your answer when I asked everyone to correct their answer. Go sign the brag board. 1,300 times already in 12 days. So just really trying to work that positive and that response and doing that in a consistent manner. And I'm so impressed with the level of dedication and on it and with itness our staff has to this. The second piece that we said that we were going to do is that we were going to communicate to parents what we're learning every single day. As of 12 days of school, we are sending home on Fridays a weekly snapshot sheet. And that snapshot sheet basically has the learning target for reading, the learning target for math, the learning target for WIN, that's kind of in the middle. It has an instructional procedure that we're working on, and then at the bottom it has a behavior target that we're working on. Today, after school, we met as a team and talked about the data from August, and we used that to say we're going to start using that data from August, that behavior sheet that we're talking about, those 83 responses, to start writing our goals for instructional procedures and our goals for behavior. And our learning targets are just following our curriculum, and they're really working on very specific I can statements. So those are going home. In addition to that, you'll notice a little check and a little X in the corner. Basically, teachers are in real time. It's not perfect. It's a check. It's a check for understanding in real time. If the learning target is, I can say the medial sound of A, right? So at, how you say that? Perfect. Check. X. Circle 1. Check. X. So every week, parents are getting real-time feedback on how their kiddos are doing in their daily, in their daily day. That's different from the grade book, which is also standards-based grade book, but they should match. So ideally, we will see our grade books looking like our snapshot sheets, but parents have real time, and so we can intervene in real time using parents as our partners. So that's what we're working on with that. We also promised that we are going to get to coherent tiered intervention. That was our third big rock. Going back to that snapshot sheet, what we're looking at is basically those two middle, or not the two middle, that one middle, that target skill, that is really what a student should be able to do for their grade level, whether that's reading 12 words per minute at a first grade level, right? Or if it's adding and subtracting within 10 or 20. I think that's the first grade standard. But whatever they are looking to, what we need students to do, that's going right there in the middle as an I can statement. And then, based on the data that we're getting each week, we're in the third week of school. We already started our first practice of that today. We are sorting kiddos into categories, basically, saying, hey, still needs help with this target skill. Still needs help with, say the target skill is adding and subtracting within 20. Still needs help identifying numbers 1 through 20. Still needs help understanding that numbers 1 through 20 can be equated to 20 bears, 19 bears. Still needs help with this. Has that skill nailed, needs extension. So is ready to go ahead and add through 30, through 40. So we're looking at what our kiddos can do based upon that weekly snapshot data, sorting them in a 2-week cycle, coming back and doing the whole thing again. We're running hot. We're running busy. Not perfect, but we've been able to implement that entire cycle fully. So that's where we're at. We're practicing, but give us another 3 weeks of school. We're gonna be amazing. We are amazing, but we're gonna be making real progress. And our teachers are just doing an amazing job of implementing this, teaching kids, helping them understand and own their own data and know where they're at. I think one anecdotal thing is, had a sped teacher walk into a class, and she walked back out and she said, I got tears in my eyes, because the kiddo had the snapshot sheet out on his desk, and he said, look, I got it. And that's what we want. We want students owning their data and being proud of their progress. That makes all the difference in the world.
Thank you, Dr. Harris. Trustees, before we pass it on to Ms. Holloway, I do want to share with you, this is Dr. Harris's, as you know, it's her first year at Cooper, and this level of real-time progress monitoring and giving students feedback is just, it's a new experience for Cooper, and I'm just really confident we're going to see the fruit of all that labor that your teachers are putting in. But I also want to underscore her efforts to support student culture. I have been part of districts where there was a great instructional plan, but the student culture and the teacher support was not as strong, and everything we intend to do instructionally falls apart because that student culture piece is there. So it's a real smart move to make sure that teachers feel well supported, that behaviors immediately addressed, and that a positive culture is set. So thank you for doing that work. All right, Ms. Holloway.
Hi again. I'm talking to you guys about our turnaround plan. The last time we talked, we were really hopeful that part of that plan began with hiring great people. So I'm excited to say that that's true. Most of our new hires have experience. We've got a couple of brand new baby teachers that have a lot to offer, and they're going to grow a lot. But we were able to hire quite a few people that already had a lot of the experience in the work that we are prioritizing in the turnaround plan. We also, when I met with you guys in June, talked about a Wagner Instructional Culture Playbook, just really clearly articulating what we're about, why we're about it, and how we're going to do that work. So we went through a revision process over the summer. We've got a 2.0 version that we were able to use in August PL and train from, which is proving to be super beneficial for us. These are the 3 things that I highlighted for y'all in our turnaround plan before, and so I'll speak to each one of those a little bit. We're prioritizing really quality delivery of instruction that's aligned to our standards and meets the needs of our kiddos, monitoring their student progress in real time, and then responding to that student progress to make sure we're filling gaps and addressing needs. That is not what's driving that. There we go. Delivery of instruction. A couple of things that we've hit the ground running pretty quickly and pretty hard on is our gradual release lesson plan. So this is just a snippet. This is a 3-day snippet. But you can see that column going down is a full lesson cycle for a classroom. That includes the standard, the learning objective, a language objective, a warm-up, and then the full gradual release. So this opportunity for teachers to deliver some new instruction, but ensure that we're allowing kids ample opportunity to engage with that instruction and content so that they can make meaning of it for themselves. And then closing out a lesson cycle with a check for understanding so our teachers can gauge, did they get it, did they not get it, and then have an opportunity to address that if they didn't, and then celebrate if they did. Those lesson plans are due a week in advance by the end of the day Wednesday for the following week so that our instructional leadership team can give feedback to our teachers on that. And they do that work during professional learning communities. So all of our core and SPED resource and inclusion teachers have a common period off by department every day. And so they have plenty of collaborative opportunity to do this work. We do have our instructional coaches, our academic dean, and our content coordinators come support during that time too. So there's some wraparound support for those teachers in those moments. The second is structured writing. We started that last year. We hit that really hard with language arts and social studies and science. We did also incorporate that in some of our elective classrooms as well, just to make sure that as a campus we have a culture of writing and demonstrating our learning through writing. So this year we want to just level that up and continue that work so that we can just move that forward. The last bullet is structured student discourse, which Dr. Henson just previewed for me lovely. I agree with her for all the reasons that she said. It's just good for kids to process their learning with colleagues. I guess they are colleagues, their peer colleagues, and process that through speaking. So we've got writing incorporated in the classroom, but also opportunities for speaking to happen in the classroom in a really structured way. We started that work in August professional learning by highlighting the why behind it, but also giving some professional learning around some strategies. So for us, we started off with some Kagan strategies, if you're familiar, but it's just strategies that promote teamwork, that engage every learner in the classroom throughout that collaborative moment, and then also has equitable participation. So one person's not carrying the load on that. And so Kagan's a great way to do it, not the only way, but we did train on that. And so all of our classrooms, regardless of what content it is, and regardless of what day, will have a collaborative work moment that's structured for students to work together and talk about their learning. This next part, combine the two together. I apologize, you can't read that very well. Monitoring student progress. We did a lot of great work on this last year, so we're, again, just building off the foundation that we have set. So the picture that you see on the top is our assessment plan in our unit plan template. All of our teachers choose essential standard, one or two of them, unpack them, and then create an assessment plan. How are you going to monitor that students are mastering that essential standard, and then what are you doing if they don't get it, and what are you doing if they do? Where we did a little bit of a revision on our assessment plan this year is really thinking through what are the common ways that a student might miss mastery of a learning objective, what misconceptions do they hold, what skill gaps do they have. If we think about those when we're planning for instruction, we can be really mindful about trying to help students avoid those common pitfalls, but then also create an intervention ready to go for those students that might still have that misconception or skill gap even afterwards. So that is kind of that bottom. It's very hard to read. It says CFA number 1. They take that learning target and they break it down into 2 or 3 common ways that students might mess up that assessment, and then design an aligned intervention to address that specific need so that when a kid demonstrates that they've done that mistake, the teachers are ready to go ahead and intervene right away. Just take some time out of the equation so that we can respond a little bit more timely than what we were able to last year. The response to student progress picture on the bottom, the essential standard tracker, we did a whole revision on our data tracker and how we talk about data, how we look at data. So what you don't see are all the student names and teachers' names, obviously, But everybody is in there for the entire grade level. So after a teacher administered some sort of common assessment, they go and note who's mastered it and then pay a lot of attention to those that didn't. They look at what exactly did that student do wrong, and then assign which intervention are they going to provide that student to then make a plan. Which kids are coming to the small group tomorrow to get that particular intervention. And so you'll see that they choose the intervention, they check off once it's been provided that we know that a kid got what they needed, and then they have a way of checking, does the kid now understand it? And if they do, go ahead and check that so we can kind of follow that all the way through. The last part, we've got a lot of systems up and running right now, but we've got a couple more that we're in the process of getting launched. Our focus for monitoring our turnaround plan are these here. So I spoke to the weekly lesson plan feedback from our instructional leadership team. We do have a pretty thorough walkthrough schedule and tracker there. We've gone ahead and triaged teachers. Right now it's by content. If you're a core, you're getting walked through every week until we better understand who needs what. And then our instructional leadership team, either instructional coaches, the academic dean or admin, are the ones that are doing those walkthroughs. And you can see there's 4 columns in there. I just randomly chose the drop down on some of those. But learning environment, learning objectives, structured student discourse, and evidence of learning are the areas that we want to really target and focus. We have other focuses, but these are the ones that we feel like we need to keep an eye on very quickly and make sure we're ready to support if teachers need it. And so we've got a method for triaging that, and that will then adjust potentially the walkthrough frequency for a teacher. The other piece on that is the drop down on the right-hand side. That's our method for feedback. So all teachers get written feedback, but our goal as an instructional leadership team is to provide the in-person, face-to-face conversation feedback to really grow and invest in our teachers. I mentioned that our student assessment data tracker got a revision on that previous slide. That'll be another way that we can monitor that we're meeting kids' needs. And then we do have bi-weekly instructional leadership team coaching and check-ins. We've got a plethora of meetings. They all have a really good purpose, but it's to make sure that nobody falls through the cracks and that we can really deploy supports as quickly as possible to those that might need it. And then lastly, we do have a leadership team that meets monthly. The purpose of that team will be to monitor the work of our campus, to collect evidence and make decisions if we need to make any sort of pivot.
Trustees, before I open it up to your questions or your feedback, I do want to share with you, first of all, well done. Second, I think every principal has the challenge of improving original instruction or tier 1 instruction and having timely interventions at the same time. And you can tell from Danielle's presentation, she has done the hard work of ensuring that tier 1 instruction or original instruction is moving forward so it doesn't solely depend on interventions. And I'm really excited for her because she had really strong retention from last year, and that staff was pumped up that for the first time in several years, they're not DNF status, they made it to a C. So she can ride that excitement into this effort into this year. But I want to turn it over to you, trustees. Any questions or comments you have for our 2 principals?
Actually, I'm delighted to hear what you had to say. I'm super pumped about what I'm hearing. My question is actually for the rest of the team. Are the other campuses following y'all's lead in doing things like this? Because this is incredible.
Our Chief of Staff, Lindsay Harris, who supervises Wagner Middle School. Go ahead and share.
I'll just say anecdotally, I was on 2 campuses today meeting with principals and walking through classrooms, and on both campuses, they showed me different versions of Danielle's trackers. One was she had shared her walkthrough tracker and that their team had triaged classrooms, and it looked very similar to that, and the other tracker was her student data tracker. And so I'd say she's talking and they're listening and using it. Yeah.
Stephanie, I want to add on to that. When we came, I think last time, you had us we showed how we, as campuses, did those individual sort of like, here are our goals, here are how we're going to get there, and all of that. I think one of the things that our leadership did was say, so to answer your question, is this is where you need to go. We're telling you the what, you figure out the how. And that level of freedom may mean that it looks a little bit different at every campus, as it should. But when you have that freedom to say, so your question is everybody doing this? Some version of it. Because they said, you figure out the how, this is the what that has to be accomplished. So I feel like that was really clear to us as principals, and I know that every principal has implemented that in some way that makes really good sense for their campus.
Test, okay. I just want to thank y'all for bringing this back and sharing your updates. It's really clear. I think, Dr. Harris, you framed it as we've got a lot of other things that are going to be happening, but these are our top 3 things. These are our priorities, and it's clear in both of y'all's presentations that you're operating with a very clear lens on here's what we have to get done this year. I agree with what Stephanie said. As I look at these tools in my mind, I'm like, I hope these are implemented at elementary schools, other middle schools. Maybe not all of them exactly, but I think there's some key best practices here that I would hope we could see across other campuses that are just best practice. My question is, how do y'all think about, with the number of tools, and Dr. Harris, I think you said something like there's like a 2-week cycle. How are y'all thinking about setting teachers up and your coaches up to sustain like the use of these as we start the year? I know there's a different energy, and not really looking for an exact answer, but just curious how y'all are thinking about sustaining the work over time.
Professional Learning Communities, PLCs, is a big tool for sustaining the work because it provides the time for them. They have a conference period, and teachers got to do grading and parent phone calls and all the things. So this is an opportunity where we get to talk about this work as it relates to their classroom and their kids with other peers in the room that are doing the same work and can support as well. Our mechanism for ensuring that it's moving in the right direction will be those check-ins, the biweekly check-ins. We meet with department heads, we meet with instructional coaches, academic dean. That's our opportunity to make sure that we're not missing something, that if something starts to become really overwhelming or it just went south and we didn't realize it, that's a chance for us to notice it in real time and then make a decision about what do we do and how do we support moving forward, as well as the leadership team that meets monthly. So we've got the support of time and the support of resources and people support, and then we've got some teams in place that are there to just make sure we're moving the way we want to move, and that if something comes up, that we're not blindsided a couple months later, that we can then make some good decisions in the moment of which way do we need to pivot and how do we respond to that.
Just press that button. There's a...
Thank you very much. Yes, there we go. There we go. This is just amazing what you both have come up with, and it's incredible amount of work that in order for this to happen. One of the things I was particularly interested in was in your presentation, Dr. Harris, about systematizing of student behavior. And, since COVID, we came back from COVID, so we've heard about student behavior, and this looks really different. And it's really exciting to see the use of technology and to be able to be responding in such a quick manner to what's going on in the classroom. And I just really want to commend you and the work and hope that this same level of student behavior monitoring and adjusting is happening at all the different campuses in some form or another. Congratulations.
Just to circle back to an original question, or a question a few questions ago, I think constantly monitoring the climate and well-being of our teachers is something, it's a tough lift for us. Like, we have to push aggressively for the sake of our students. At the same time, we have to take care of the people that are taking care of kids. And so we use that analogy of like a pressure cooker. Like there has to be some pressure in order to cook the rice, but too much pressure and the system blows. And so we're constantly doing things like asking for feedback. We have systems like Teacher Advisory Council. These are two principals that listen to their teachers closely and then make adjustments to meet the need, but at the same time, we have to move forward. So it's a tough leadership challenge for them. Okay, before we close, I do want to say that, Danielle, I'm glad that people are using your forms because they're always so pretty. I mean, the color palette, the fonts, I mean, I'm just always so impressed. All right.
Just
All right.
so you know, on Danielle's slides, I always let her put them in first, and then I copy them.
Oh, yeah.
Because they're just perfect.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Dr. Harris, Ms. Holloway. We're going to hand it over to Wes Vanacek, and we are going to lean into district improvement plan and campus improvement plans.
All right. Good evening, folks. There we go. I apologize. I did not have Danielle do my slides, but duly noted. So just want to talk just a few moments about our campus and district improvement planning and really more about the process, a little bit of background, and then talk about next steps. Hopefully you received access to those plans. It was a little bit different approach this year, giving you access to a folder. So hopefully that worked. If not, we can adjust from there. But each year, as you guys know, the board adopts the goals and performance objectives for our DIP and CIP. These plans are aligned to the strategic blueprint, and that's a uniqueness to Georgetown ISD that we have that allowance from our District of Innovation plan. So that allows us to align our plans to our local goals. A little bit about the process, very similar process that you heard described by Danielle and Angie. We start with a comprehensive needs assessment where staff are reviewing all relevant data. That includes academic data, that includes cultural, social data, et cetera. And from there, come together and collaborate to build strategies to identify if this is where we're trying to get to, this is where we're at, what's the strategy necessary to get us to that finish line. Our DPC, or District Performance Committee, will review this plan in October and provide feedback on those strategies. We're excited to bring it to them. There we go. So our needs assessment, Heather shared a lot about the different needs and the results from the recent STAR testing in spring. So much of the needs assessment has been presented previously in July, August. It's also captured in the plan in the CNA, and then we've got a pretty good host of addendums. So if you want to dive deep into the addendums are there as well. Our approach to improvement planning, we are using a custom template, and so I'm going to show you just a picture of that. It's the same as last year, so no changes there, but it is different from maybe different organizations. But essentially, our campuses choose at least one strategic objective to, I think, the principal's points of really hyper-focusing specifically on where are you going to put most of your change energy. We know we can't change everything all at the same time, so really focusing on what are the major changes. And so every campus chooses at least one objective from strategic priority area 1, which is the academic one, to do major change on one objective there. They then choose at least one other objective from the other priority areas to do major change as well. The remaining objectives are either considered minor change or maintain. And the difference between those three, major change, the way we look at it is that's change that's likely going to last more than a year. It's going to require resources outside of your campus. So it's whether that's bringing in district folks or outside, consulted or other organizations to come in and support that work. Minor change would be work that the campus level team, their campus instructional leadership team, would be carrying that weight. Happens within the confines of the school year. And then maintain is not that there's not work going on, it's that there's not change going on, right? So the idea of pedal the bicycle, maintain this direction requires work, energy, attention, and focus, but we're not changing direction, we're not changing speed on that particular aspect. And that may be because there's not a need for the change yet, or because the capacity is being directed to where the change needs to happen. These plans and this process is connected to the campus support team process. I think last month Heather was just sharing the frequency and kind of the cadence of those CSTs, or campus support teams. And so this is their campus plans are a big part of that CST meeting. So if you jump in there, and this is just a lot of words on a screen, but just kind of want to orient to what it looks like. That top piece in yellow is really what's approved by the board. That's the strategic priority area. I really want to say SPA because that's what I call them, to not trip over my words. But also the objectives as well. And so we have the 4 priority areas and then 3 or 4 objectives within each one. As you kind of go down the left side, you'll see something called the desired state, and that's really where are we going as it relates to this objective. And then current state is where are we now, and that's really as of August 1. And then evidence of desired state, this is kind of a different piece of our process, and it's really causing us to identify what does progress look like so we know we're making progress towards our end goal. Once we know where we're going, where we're at, what progress looks like, we can then go to the strategies, and that's where we line out the actions and the steps that are necessary to get from A to Z. Let's just another look at that. So our next steps, like I mentioned, we'll meet with the DPC. Our campuses are meeting with their site-based teams to gather input and get feedback as well. Campus and district leaders have begun certain improvement efforts, so we are 3 weeks into school and several weeks into the school year. And so there have been improvement efforts already underway. That will obviously continue. We do anticipate bringing the plans to you for consideration and action at the September 15th board meeting. And then we'll do a mid-year progress check on these plans in February this coming spring. And then finally, if you've got any questions as you're reviewing the plans either prior to or after approval, you're welcome to reach out with any questions. When we make updates to the plan, I'll kind of call your attention to it in the folder. But my hope is that we can just use the folder and you can go right in there and access it at your leisure. So, any questions? All right. Well, thank y'all, and please holler if you change your mind.
Okay. Now, fun one. That's the introduction I was hoping for. Yes, I'm glad you think it's fun. The goal is to actually be back at every workshop bringing updates on this topic. And so we'll let you know if that's not going to be the case. But so good news, tonight's really just a primer. Just what's the thinking inside the process and where we're headed from here. We kick off now here being September. So question on everyone's mind, why are we changing attendance zones? Okay. Oh, I can hold this closer, you bet, yes. Why are we changing attendance zones? Well, number one, we're opening 2 new schools in the fall of 2026. We included a graphic here that has kind of 2 purposes. One is we usually get questions, where are these schools located? And you can see that if you see the high school, Eastview High School, at the top of the image, you can see where middle school 5 and elementary school 12 are located. We also thought it was an interesting image to show the satellite differences between roughly 2 years ago and roughly 2 months ago. You see the big scar next to Eastview High School. That's a pretty massive development underway, highlighting the need for opening of schools, right? Families are coming, homes are being built. So really excited about the progress on those buildings. I'm sure there'll be more updates on that as we go, but that is number one. Number two, we have the opportunity, we're a growing school district. So to steal a little from the demographer report that you heard, we have 51 actively building subdivisions with nearly 3,000 lots available for homes right now. We have 27 future subdivisions with 23,000 planned lots in those. Right? 3,600 lots within the 20 subdivisions with groundwork currently underway. And then the big numbers, by 2030, we should be getting close to 16,300 students. And then by 2035, we're getting close to 20,000 students in the district at this pace. So yes, we need to be thinking long term as we go through this zoning process. And then number three, we believe that we have the opportunity here to balance our school utilization. This is a take on a graph that you've seen. I added a column here to kind of give you an up-to-date perspective. Capacity has the red box around it. That's the comfortable capacity. We know we don't want to put that many kids in a building all at once because suddenly you run into a lot of constraints that make the learning experience not so great, right? But when we get close to full, we start lighting them up green and yellow. You'll see our projected capacity there in the 2025-26 column, and then our current, which is current as of last Thursday, enrollment numbers for those campuses. The asterisks next to Cooper, Frost, and Wolf are there because you'll see those numbers are very different than the projections. And that's basically a result of us doing some fancy things with pre-K this year to give Wolf a little bit of relief in the interim as we move forward. So pre-K and Wolf and Cooper, both pre-K students are now going to Frost. So that's why those numbers look different, that much different. Okay. Similarly, same graphic for secondary schools, but just to give you an idea where we are at capacity and over capacity. And then our current as of last Thursday. So we're on pace to meet those projections and probably exceed them this year. Should be no surprise. We do that almost every year, with a few exceptions around the COVID era. So what are we planning to do? Our charges, based on what you just saw, is that we are going to create new attendance zones for the opening of the elementary and middle schools. That just happens when we open schools, right? We're going to address the capacity concerns at Wolf, Williams, and Cooper specifically, right? We know that they're the closest to being too full. Well, Wolf is far beyond too full, as we know. We're going to maximize the utilization of our current campuses to the extent possible. If you looked at those capacities to enrollment on schools like McCoy, St. Gabriel, and some others, we've got some room. And so we're going to look at what opportunities we can possibly use some of those seats with minimal disruption and a whole bunch of other parameters I want to talk to you about in just a minute, right? It's not as straightforward as it might seem when you see a one-dimensional slide. And then plan for the future growth of students. We know that I know Wes's team is heavily watching what's happening in the Northeast, in the county area. We've got growth happening, in a lot of areas, and so we want to be thinking not just immediate zoning for the coming school year, but as far out as we possibly can. Our commitment, draft attendance zones that support the ongoing financial health of the school district and our student academic achievement, which is our core business. Minimize future attendance changes for the same students. We call it whiplash. It's impossible to do completely, but we do it as best we can so that we are trying to, like a middle school student, for example, is in a building for 3 years, and we keep them there if we rezone their neighborhood so that they don't have to change twice in their same academic. We try really hard to do that. Allow us to serve the needs of our students and families and help us be great stewards of district resources, getting the best use of the money. So this is where we really want to, I'm going to talk about these two slides of parameters, and then I'd like to ask you guys to chime in on what you've seen and make sure that these are the parameters we believe fulfill the mission and charges, but we want to hear as board members, what parameters do you also want us to be taken in consideration, or would you want to change any that we have here, right? So we want to ensure opportunities for community feedback. We think that's very important, the voice of the community, including Georgetown ISD departments and campuses in the process. That's your counseling and guidance and dual language and transportation, nutrition, everyone who gets impacted by even the slightest change. Recommending attendance zones that can help balance student demographics. We know that that's important. We don't want to look completely different in one school than we do in another. We want to prioritize plans for student programs, transportation, and safety. The distance you live from school is important. There's some kind of hazardous roadways, especially with things like today when they hit a bridge. That's neither here nor there. Minimizing the use of portables to the extent possible. We know that's not always possible, but that's one a goal. And being transparent with plans for future zoning facilities and school needs to our community. So, stopping there, pen in hand, what do you see or hear that you want us to add, do differently, parameters-wise? Any thoughts?
It's green. Okay, good. I've probably been here the longest, and when my daughter went through school, we had a very set pattern. But 6 years later, when my son was going through school, we were going through a lot of growth. So our neighborhood off of Booties Road was often used for the leveling. So he went to Pearl, Carver, Williams, McCoy, and then Benold. The point I tried to make to the other parents, it wasn't just 208 John Thomas Drive that was being picked up and moving. It was a whole neighborhood. So it's still a neighborhood. It's still a cohort that's going. I think there's a lot of angst. I remember when we opened Benold, there was a lot of angst. And then there was, whoa, a lot of pushback when we were discussing Forbes, because it was on the other side of the highway kind of thing. So a lot of people have fear of the unknown. And so what I have found, and I remember telling a previous superintendent this, once the doors open and the kids actually enter the building, all the kvetching stops. So, yeah, write that. It's a good Yiddish word from Long Island. Just listen to their fear. Mm-hmm.
I really appreciate that, and I'm going to talk to the team about the word cohort. You're right, that word came up a lot in our last rezoning. There's a lot of anxiety about friend groups going to different schools, and so the concept of a cohort, not just a grade level cohort, or there are groups in neighborhoods that might feel shaken up by, and so addressing the fears and talking to them about cohorts, very good, very good.
Hey, Lana, real quick, can you kind of discuss the ability for us to maintain that K through 12 type feeder pattern as Georgetown continues to grow and we rezone, and what type of consideration has already been given and will be given to, because I know a lot of people are expressing concern with losing that continuous feeder pattern.
Yeah, I wish I had a super short elevator speech answer to that. What we learned is that the term feeder pattern in a smaller school district, as Georgetown once was an easy term to use. Like, if I went to elementary school here, that meant I go to middle school here, which means I go to high school here. And as the district reaches the size we are now and growing, it's where your address is determines where you go to school. And that was unwelcome to quite a few people to hear last time we did some rezoning, because they thought, well, if I go to Wagner, then I'm certainly going to Eastview. Well, maybe not. Where's your address? And so we created a really useful online map where you can just type in your address and it tells you your feeder pattern, shows your elementary, middle, and high school for that particular address. In fact, there's a link at the end of the slide. So to get ahead of some of that, there's some kind of DIY. What's my address and what schools will I attend? But to kind of address the concerns of I want this to be my feeder pattern, that becomes much more challenging, because ultimately we want to try our very best to create cohorts of students that stay together all the way through to a certain high school. But without getting too far down into places we haven't gone yet, with the opening of the third comprehensive high school 4, now we're starting to talk about people asking us to look around corners that we can't see around necessarily right now. But I don't know if that answered your question.
Yeah, I think the concern that's been expressed is more a small student population from one middle school getting segmented off and now being, a minority at their high school, versus that maybe that middle school has a 30-70 split or a 64, where it's a lot more support for that student going to the next step.
And that's a good point. So what I'm gonna do is make note that, like, ultimately, can we create a little bit like we did with I think Manold or used to be like 50-50. Way more split than, I don't have those numbers memorized, but so really balancing for larger cohorts to stay together is what I'm taking from that. Okay. Mr. Hurt, you were going to say something?
Here we go. I think a lot about what are we doing. So as we're transparent with plans, if we could just continue to be transparent with what our thought process is on that would help out immensely.
Even
Yeah, Mr. Hurt, can you, do you mind, I really appreciate that response. Can you elaborate just a little bit more about what does our actions or behaviors look like when we are being transparent? Because it's one thing to put,
Yeah.
like we can have board briefs and something on the website, but when you think of what families really need to hear and how they need to hear it, do you have just something that really comes to mind that we should think about?
Well, not really, but I love the Citizens Advisory Committee. You know, I think the more that we get people involved in helping us with these decisions and being transparent on why we're thinking in these processes, that helps out immensely. You know, for people to understand the what and the where, you know, to explain to somebody that there's not a light at an intersection, so it makes more sense for that school to go, or the kid to go to the right and be safe getting to the school, is just communication. So whether that's through another advisory committee or social media or whatever that is, and make sure people know it's fluid. You know, that's going to be the hard thing, is having people understand that things do change. I mean, we're in the very, very initial stages of huge growth, and it's fun, but it's you know, it's going to be a lot, and it's going to change. You know, we can talk about something today, and tomorrow it's going to be completely different.
You know, Landon, he's something that, I don't know if we were already planning on doing this or not, but something that I think is really good feedback here is, it's almost like we have to, before we even begin the process, telegraph what the process is going to feel like. Like it's going to involve, it's going to have implications for these schools. We're going to come out there with recommendations, and we're going to listen to feedback, and ultimately our final recommendation will likely not be our first recommendation, but hearing the feedback and working through the feelings is part of how this is supposed to go.
Yeah, I love that. That's took that note down. Talk about the committee development process. Okay, so other parameters before
I was going to, I think we're about to talk about timeline, but I was just going to add, because we did this 2 years ago, is that right? Yeah. So I think you've got written the ensure opportunities for community feedback. I'm curious, and I think Cody was speaking to this as well. That sounds like we would do some sort of, you know, there was like a rezoning committee, and then there were meetings throughout the community, like live, where people could come and get real-time info. I think also the other thing that was really helpful was you all kind of published your real-time drafts. And I know that probably is like a hard balance to strike of like, this is a draft, this is going to change. But I think people were able to access wherever we had that hosted on the website to feel like they were in the know, what was happening. So keeping those efforts to make known information known to the public via like the website if they can't attend all the meetings. I feel like that was really positive last time, even though like people had to process it in different ways. And then I think this is true, but the other thing is just the timing, so that parents can prepare themselves and their kids for the changes. I think there are some campuses that did really nice. Maybe I'm making this up, so if I am, we can, but did like kind of like welcome the new families in early ahead of time, like all those things that help. You know, I'm a parent of elementary kids, and I will say, you know, it may be more for the parents, that's okay. But just helping people manage themselves through the change, but have information as soon as they can have it, I think is always helpful.
Very good feedback, and thank you, because it segues really nicely into this next part. I think if I miss any of the points you just mentioned, let me know. Okay, so what is the process? So really quickly, the formal process starts now in September and closes in February. So the intent is to bring you guys a recommendation in February to approve or vote on. The kind of the leading edge of the tip of the spear is that we get our geo-coded information and work with our demographer. And then we have a working database of where everyone who currently is enrolled in Georgetown ISD lives, and we can begin to make scenarios. Now, a committee of staff and community members will convene to analyze opportunities and the challenges and draft recommendations. So it is very much a cooperative process with staff and community members. We'll work with the district staff to make decisions regarding options for grandfathering, transfers, transportation, academic programs, socioeconomic balance. It's a lot of factors. And so we want the experts at the table, raising their hand if they think there's something that we're missing. A series of community meetings will be hosted in our schools to inform families, and you'll see that on the schedule in just a minute. Updates are posted online for community review. Check that box. And an update will be provided at every board workshop, and then brought for action everywhere. Okay, so just a quick, not everything's included here, but it gives you most of it. Here we are in September. Let's look at October. Those scenario drafting and pre-work. So that's where the maps you guys are used to seeing with the colorful zones. And then when we get into the late October, we're talking about our first long-range planning committee zone meeting. That's the community and staff members coming together. That's when we'll have the right geocoded information and we have scenarios to look at. And so that's the right time to do that. Then following quickly in the first part of November, we'll have our East and West town hall meetings, like you guys who participated in those before. And then you can kind of see the pattern: long-range planning committee, town halls, et cetera, right up to the February run up to the recommendation. So lots of other things happening in between there, but those are the month by month. You can see how we get to the place where the recommendations comes.
And it's not on there, but can we assume that if the community town halls are starting in November, that we would post a first draft of
Yes.
what these zones would look like in October then?
Maybe. Probably. I just wonder that if the posting those out for let's talk about that, because now I think I like that idea.
Yeah, because normally I've only been here for one round of this, but I think our cadence was we ran through it with the board at a workshop, and then we turned around
posted
and
it.
started the community meetings.
Yeah, good call. We'll get those added to the bigger expanded version of this schedule that exists. So how are we making up the community members on the committee? We haven't yet, but we will, pending this feedback tonight, ask principals to nominate so that we get good representation. And we're really kind of using the middle schools as the pivot points because they really kind of make up the quadrants of the district. But we want to make absolutely certain that it's fully representative of everyone in the school district, because unlike smaller zoning efforts where you're only opening a school, in this case we're talking, it's going to impact a lot of schools.
Can I ask you a question on that?
Yes, please.
So it'll end up being great representation across the district, but how will the principals nominate the parents? Is there like a criteria? Will they reach out to all the parents? Just so it's clear that it wasn't a parent that was, not that the principals would be doing that, but so each parent feels like they had an opportunity to kind of say why they might be good for that committee, and it doesn't feel like we just handpick someone for each school, just because that kind of looks like we were just picking people that would go with what we wanted and not looking for opinions. So just curious what the criteria will be to get to the parents.
Noted, and we're going to work on that to make sure that exact thing is addressed from the get-go. Thank you. And I have the best partner in the world in Lindsay Harris, the queen of making great committees, to help me with that. So, okay, so who is on the district committee member side of this? It should be no surprises the names you see up there. They represent a cross-section of all the folks that have a lot of talent and I'd say time and talent. Nobody has the extra time, but we're going to make the time to get this right. And then roughly 15 community members to round it out at about 30 people on the committee. Okay, now to the question of communication flow. It's important that information is provided to campuses to include in their campus communication. We know parents take what comes home from the school very seriously, and sometimes more so than what comes from the district. Community-wide information shared at town halls we've talked about. We're going to be very active on social media and on our website to make sure the latest and greatest information is posted. Let's Talk has been our primary channel for getting feedback, and it works really, really well because we can address it as an army. And then targeted emails being sent to families that are impacted. We're going to do a better job of that this year than we did in previous time when we didn't get specific information to specific families about how they're going to be impacted. I think that's an area of improvement that I wrote down from last time that we're going to really focus on. I think we can do better there. And anyone can go currently and look at that fancy map I was talking about and our existing zones right now. And like I said, if you put your address in, it shows you the schools in your air quotes feeder pattern, right? Because it's not they're not pure. And the site also has a link to the 23-24 zoning information work. So if you needed a refresher on what we did last time, all the 9 elementary plans and 5 middle school plans. I mean, we went through a lot of iterations to land where we landed, and that's all still public and live, and you can go see it. Okay, questions, thoughts?
I don't have a question, just a final comment.
Yes, sir.
I know we ran this 2 years ago, and I just want to thank you for the work then, and thank you for taking it on again. I'm sure it's not 100% by choice, but I felt like at the end of the last process with the amount of communication, the amount of iterations, the amount of community input you guys took and made adjustments as much as possible, we ended up with a handful of unhappy people, but I feel like most all of them understood why the decisions were made. And so I feel like if we can get to that point of understanding at the end of this process again, honestly, it'll be a huge success for you.
I appreciate that. Yeah, we'll definitely stay tuned for that, for sure. Back to Mr. Vanacek.
All right. Thanks, sir. All right, guys, we're going to spend a few moments talking about what we are doing to ensure that our students are ready for the next step after high school, whether that be college, career, or military. And so we're going to start just kind of centering up on our belief that it's our responsibility to prepare students for the future. And of course, you recognize the newly minted board goal there of growing our CCMR readiness rate from 79% to 90%. So we're excited to share the work that's underway and that we're embarking on to get us there. So a little bit first to kind of unpack what is CCMR. Three big buckets, if you will: college ready, career ready, and military ready. And that college ready really starts with satisfying the Texas Success Initiative, or the TSI. And there's a variety of ways that a student can do that, many of which are test-based, but also there are some course-based processes. So the TSIA2 is a test. The SAT and the ACT also count. There are reading and math benchmarks that a student has to perform at in order to be considered TSI complete for math. A student does not have to be TSI complete within the same kind of indicator. So if a student took the ACT and they scored high enough for math, and then they took the TSIA for language arts, that's totally acceptable. Additionally, there is a college prep pathway, which is actually where students participate in a course for the year. And then if it's English, there's a college level essay that's graded. And then if it's math, there's a college level examination that they take. And so they've got to pass both the essay and the course for that credit to be considered college ready. Additionally, students and on-ramps. And that's where they're actually earning college credit while in high school. That goes towards their college readiness. And then if they score a 3 on any AP school, that also counts. And so the interesting thing about the AP access is that students can start taking AP courses as a freshman in high school. And so we have freshmen that are now based on their their AP scores. And then finally, right now we don't currently have an associate's degree offering, but if a student earns an associate's degree, that is also a college readiness pathway. I'll explain a little bit about the career ready version of that as well. So in career ready, we're looking, a lot of this work lives in the career and technical education world in CTE. And that is if a student is a completer, which is 3 or more courses for 4 or more credits. So they're really spending time going through the pathway, whether it's engineering or cosmetology or health science. They're starting at the principal's level, and they're matriculating through to the completer level, and they get the industry-based certification. So it's the completer status plus the IBC. Also, for our students that are in our special education programs, if they graduate what is called IEP Workforce Ready, they're also considered career ready. This is a pretty cool program or an indicator basically if a student either has a full-time job, there's a specific coding and program that these students are a part of, but if they have a full-time job or they have job-ready skills, then they're considered career-ready as well. For our students in special education that are not in those programs, if they graduate on what's called the Distinguished Graduation Plan or the Advanced Graduation Plan, they're also considered career-ready. And then finally, the Level 1 and Level 2 certificate is college credit towards an industry. So it's not quite the associate's degree, but it's college credit towards that industry. And so we're standing up opportunities for Level 1 and Level 2 certificates this year, which we're excited about. And then the last one is military ready. So enlisting in the U.S. Armed Forces or Texas National Guard, obviously those students are considered military ready. So that's kind of the big picture of what is CCMR. We're going to kind of drop into career ready, look at what we're doing there. Oh, Ms. Mullen, did you have a question? Go ahead.
I wanted to ask about the TSI.
Oh, sure.
And I don't know a whole lot about that assessment. What does it look like in comparison to end of course? Is it a basic kind of assessment? Is it, a pretty challenging kind of assessment for students? Tell us a little bit more about the TSI.
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say that the TSI, it's a college readiness exam. So not necessarily a college entrance exam, but a college readiness exam. And so what it means is that if a student meets the benchmarks in either math or reading or other content areas, then that student is arguably ready for college level course content. And so what it means for the student is I can now go to college and not take what we would call remedial math courses or remedial language arts courses. And so I would say maybe it's not on the same level as ACT or SAT necessarily, as those are the entrance exams, but it's very similar in rigor. It's very similar in style to like an end of course exam. The content area flows through language arts and math. There are a variety of kind of interventions that our students can get the data and then basically access free interventions to be able to perform better. If they satisfy one area, they don't have to retake the whole thing. They can just retake kind of the math section or the language arts section. So I would call it a moderately, kind of in terms of a college readiness exam. It's a pretty rigorous exam, if you will.
Wes, does every student have the opportunity to show TSI readiness?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. This is a metric through TSI through the test or just in general? In general. Yeah, the TSI completion is a great indicator that we would want all kids to achieve. That's really a high school and future ready literacy and numeracy measure. And so that's one of those that whether a kid is college bound or career bound or military bound, arguably we want them to be literate and numerate at the highest level possible.
And then just based upon the work that you're helping lead this year, would you, I'm kind of going out on a limb here, but would you say that our efforts to help students be TSI ready was essentially for this year low-hanging fruit for us in order to improve CCMR status?
Yes, sir. Yeah, that's going to be an area for us to see some gains for sure.
What year do students generally take the TSI?
That's a good question. So it kind of depends. We start offering them opportunities as early as their 10th grade year. And that's because in order to access dual credit and on-ramps, you've got to have that TSI readiness-based course you're trying to take. That's all. Some adjustments to our plan this year is we had an opportunity also that was previously in Algebra 2, so normally around that junior year level, and that was kind of initial wisdom was that was a good idea. That kind of gets a pretty full spectrum of math content, so they ought to be ready for it. However, what we've learned, both from our data, but also just working with some consultants, is a bulk of the TSA tested material is earlier high school type math and language arts. And so what was happening is our students were too far removed from the content, and that's what they were struggling with. And so we're actually backing up the TSI-2 testing for all students geometry. So kind of mid-year, early second semester geometry. So it'll be closer to the point of instruction. It'll also give us more time to intervene in the event that a student is not successful. We're not waiting until the end of junior year to know whether that's working or not. It's earlier.
Is there a cost for students to take the TSI?
The first one is covered, and then after that, there's a fee. They're pretty minimal fees. I want to say under double digits, but I could be off on that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
You bet. I don't have anything else to say. All of y'all's questions have gotten me there. So, teasing. So jumping in and kind of talking CTE first. We have just kind of a statement that I would say kind of centers us, kind of a lighthouse, if you will, for us in CTE. But the Georgetown ISD is the pinnacle of career and technical education in the state of Texas, with 24 programs of study and 12 career clusters and pathways leading to industry-based certifications in high demand and high wage jobs. CTE and GISD provide students with clear and robust paths to successful and meaningful careers. So we use that when we're considering next additional programs. What are we, kind of what's coming down the track for us. We're excited to share that we launched our GISD Advanced Manufacturing in Automation and Robotics program this year. That's a partnership with both CellLink and the Georgetown Manufacturing Alliance. So students are getting industry-grade hands-on experience in manufacturing. And this would be manufacturing, if you think of some of the higher tech companies that are moving into the area with kind of the robotic arms and that kind of piece, more so than, say, kind of a machinist type manufacturing. So really trying to hit on the high wage and high demand for our students. There are some of these jobs that kids can come straight out of high school making $50,000 as an 18-year-old with a lot of upward mobility in the career. So excited about that. So what does excellence look like in CTE? Myself and Mr. Schultz, Bretton Schultz, our fantastic director of CTE, have some kind of metrics that we watch to see, are we making the progress that we hope to? And really that's looking at the number of kids that are matriculating to completer status, the number of kids that are staying with that program up until the completion. And so that's a 6% gain from last year. We also want to make sure that we're offering as many industry-based certifications as possible. We have 24. Also administering as many of the actual tests. So we've increased the number of students participating in the IBCs. Historically, years ago, we would have an IBC and it was kind of a little bit of an optional concept. And so, but really, Bretton's done a great job of bringing our programs kind of to a point where these industry-based certifications being aligned to high wage and high demand jobs is a necessity for those students' career readiness. The pass rates, of course, we want to see those continue to go up. We're at 65%. That's 10% gain from 23-24. And then, of course, funding. These are very expensive programs. They're worth it, but they are expensive. Fortunately, they come with a weighted funding mechanism. And so we keep our eye very closely on CTE funding. That's what allows us to maximize opportunities for students into the future. CTSO, those are our student organizations. So these are clubs and organizations that you all see at board meetings down in the front of the room that have achieved at the state level. And so we have robust CTSO participation and each one of those qualifies for state each year so far. We want to grow work-based learning opportunities for students, so that's getting them out of our classroom and shops, which are wonderful facilities, but getting them out into the community to where they're getting to engage with the workforce in a meaningful way. And then conversely, we also want to bring in business and industry partners into the classroom so that whether it's mentors from kind of an academic perspective, building an airplane, there's not a lot of us in education that build many airplanes. But there are a lot of aviation mechanics and pilots and so forth that are fortunate to give us their time. And that's just one example. Each of our programs has mentors, and we want to continue growing those. Yes, ma'am. You bet. Totally cool. You bet. So really it's the 1371 students matriculating. That's the first half. Because a student can become career ready if they are a completer and have an IBC. So we want to see students matriculating all the way through and not, I jumped into health science for year 1, year 2, and then I changed my mind and I went over here to a different program. We want to be able to advise them well enough in advance to know what you're getting into. Of course, we're not going to prevent a student from making a choice based on theirs. That's kind of the beauty of these courses is they are exploratory in nature and kids should try things. But the two pieces are the industry as well as students that are taking those tests combined with the completer status. And so right now our goal for next year is that that's going to be about 43%. So that's 43% towards that 90. The interesting thing is all of these indicators, students who are career ready are likely also college ready or vice versa. So it's not necessarily. Yeah, good question. I guess we're losing batteries. So looking at kind of 2025 and beyond, so like I mentioned, we have plans for growth and expansion. However, these are expensive, so we want to make it, kind of these are measured approaches, but the 4 programs that we're looking to expand to in phase 2 would be entrepreneurship, cybersecurity, networking, and building trades. And so these all fall into the high wage, high demand for our area, which that is set by the workforce rural capital area is kind of what determines that. So where I grew up, manufacturing is not a thing for high demand or high wage, but here in our area, it's great. One last point that I would say about this, that of course there's a cost associated with all of these programs. There's also an intention, we want to be careful that we don't drain a program for sake of a new one, unless that's the intention. Sometimes there's a little bit of a replacement. Maybe we have an antiquated program that there's a more modern approach we're shifting kids over to.
And Wes, it would be correct to say that for those 4 programs you highlighted, there's a potential certification that goes with
There is an absolute certification that goes with each one of those. That's correct.
Thank you.
Yep, you bet. Alrighty, so this is kind of switching gears, jumping out of career ready and looking at college ready. So just want to share some trends with you guys. So we had an 80% retention rate in students in AP, on-ramps, and dual credits. So that means they stuck, 80% of the kids stuck with that advanced college readiness coursework. We also launched our advanced academic student ambassadors this year. Jordan Coatsy Folks works with students to better understand what is their advanced coursework experience like, so that we can make adjustments along the way and continue to retain more and more students. Some additional numbers here, and just one thing I want to remind you is AP score of a 3 or higher on any AP exam gives a kid CCMAR status. So we've got 9th graders, or not yet, we've got 10th graders that are CCMR because of their scores in 9th grade. 40% of students taking an AP exam scored a 3 or higher last year. 68% of those tests in 24-25 scored a 3 or higher. And what the numbers reflect there are we have students take multiple AP exams. Your students may be some of those. Percentages of students scoring 3 or higher at some point in their high school career. You see 15 at 10th grade, 20 at 11th, and then 24 at a graduating class. And to your point, Ms. Cox, or Ms. Gallardo, this is a direct kind of indicator towards that college readiness. So as this number goes up, so does our total CCMR number. Yep. You go ahead.
I'm going to ask a question about the 40%, and that's pretty. I mean, typically, you've not seen a real high percentage of students who have made the 3 as far as AP. So I would assume that means that 60% didn't make a 3 or higher. So talk a little bit about AP and this exam, because there's got to be something going on there that the kids in many ways are struggling with it and not pace it. And maybe we don't know what it's going to look like, or just talk a little bit more about that.
Yep. So I'm going to kind of talk in generalities riskily. Because the AP profile is very diverse in terms of and what the courses and what the tests look like. Some of them are portfolio based, some of them are auditory in the listening and speaking in the languages, and then some of them are what I would say kind of come and get it, multiple choice, or read and write. So there's a very wide variety of what the AP exams are like. So I can't say they're all this certain way. There is a definite test-taking strategy to AP exams that is directly related to how those AP exams are graded. and that's just due to the nature of the exam and the volume of the content that's on there. So of course, the discrete portions of the test where it's question and answer is a lot more direct to prepare for, where there are kind of discussion-based questions that are far more subjective, and it requires a different type of preparation for the students. Which it's great preparation. It supports language, literacy and numeracy, in kind of the STAR EOC world as well. But it's definitely a different type of preparation. And so our AP teachers are being supported by our content coordinators and our teaching and learning team to best identify the strategies for supporting success on those AP based on the particular course. Of course, AP Art 5 looks very different than AP World History, for example.
Right.
And so, I would say it's knowing this information, having this information as part of some new work is really walking that data into the classroom, incorporating that into the PLC conversations, and then identifying the best practices for supporting.
Right. Thank you.
You bet. Alrighty, this is just a quick look at SAT. ACT also counts, if you will, for college readiness. Our students, we have the SAT kind of suite, and so we have students taking it as in 8th grade all the way through their senior year. We have a very high participation rate, so you'll see the number of testers each year. It's about 90% of our classes in high school. 8th grade is pretty low right now. We've got an information campaign to try to drive those numbers back up. But what you see on the board is our district, we're in the purple, and then everybody else that we're compared against is in blue. The darkest version of the purple is the percent of students that met both of the math and the ELAR benchmark. And then the kind of lighter purple is the percent of students that met one or the other, and then of course the grayed out is who didn't meet it. And so you can see just kind of the comparison down the board against the state. The first one, that's comparing us to all public schools, public and charter schools that are like us. And then the state is all schools, that's including then private as well, then U.S., and then our global testers. And so I would say that statistically we're hanging in there. We want to really grow the number of students who are meeting both benchmarks in math and language arts. And we've got some efforts around that this year. So how are we preparing for college readiness? The first is that data-informed approach. And so we've already kicked and had some great teammates lead our campus leaders through kind of a data dig, understanding what data is available, what can be done with the information, how does it correlate into actual classroom instruction, and align to the TEKS, fortunately. So we're excited about that. We've got another follow-up coming in the next few weeks. There are curricular supports to prepare for these college entrance exams. So we have question banks in math. There's an RLA question bank being created right now. There are also some programs that our teachers access with our students that is like an online platform program for students to access for TSIA2 prep as well as SAT. There's a lot of what's good for SAT is often good for TSIA2, right? And additionally good for EOC. We spoke about this, but that strategic alignment of the coursework to be best prepared, and that's the mid-year assessment of the TSIA2. So bringing that away from Algebra 2 and bringing it down to the middle of January. We thought the way we were doing it was wise, and essentially we learned and improved. And then last piece is just that additional communications with families about the importance of college readiness. This is a piece that post-COVID, I think there's 1 or 2 schools in Texas requiring these college entrance exams, and that's a drastic change from just right before COVID, right? And that shift is going back and forth. Is that the more of our students who are college ready, or literate and numerate at a college ready level, the better for them, regardless of the path that they choose. And so we want to encourage our community, encourage our families to take advantage of the opportunities that we have. It's just a kind of a communication campaign out there for us. with this information. So with that, that was a lot of information, and thank you all for the questions, but any other questions that you might have? You bet.
There's a whole team working with Wes on this effort. He mentioned Jordan Coatsy folks, but Breton Schultz is also here in the room, and several other teammates that I'm forgetting to mention. But I just really appreciate the effort to really create opportunities for kids
You bet.
through the CCMR effort.
Absolutely. Great team effort.
Hey, before we go, the board just wants to thank the team here at Williams for hosting us and allowing us to come and crash your campus and bring our workshop out of our normal environment. So thank you for allowing us to be here tonight.
All right, trustees, unless there's any further questions, this concludes our board workshop. Thank you so much.